few years ago now, my life had become incredibly kind of complicated and overbearingly full of mindless clutter. And I was very, very busy. And I had this deep down desire to really simplify my life, this urge to just simplify me. And I thought to myself, God, how am I going to do this? How am I going to simplify my life? And I just thought, bloody hell, I'm too bloody busy to simplify my life. But I did actually find some time in the evenings, as one does with a busy life. This is what I did. I started to carve wooden spoons. And I know. and I did this using the wood that I'd found from windswept trees, on walks, out with the dog. And I did it using some basic hand tools, an axe and a couple of knives. And I did this until I got blisters, and I did it until those blisters turned to calluses. And I found that I couldn't stop. And so aside from having all these beautiful utensils, I realised that I was actually becoming addicted to the making process. And at the same time, my life was becoming simplified, and it was becoming immeasurably better in many other ways. And I thought, this stuff is medicinal, and I should really try and pass it on to other people. So that's what I set out to do. I set out to start spoon carving workshops, where I teach other people how to carve their very own wooden spoons. So, who comes to a spoon carving workshop? Well, it's become very obvious to me that the kind of person that comes to a spoon carving workshop is the kind of person that wants to leave at the end of the day with a lovely hand-carved wooden spoon. And but most people, they haven't done any woodwork before, okay, let alone take an axe to carve a piece of tree into a shape. So most arrive with lovely soft hands and this very firm idea of the kind of spoon that they'd like to leave with. Okay, so the first thing we do is we select a piece of freshly felled branch. And it's really cool to see this. This is where people really take their time to select a piece of branch. And it's like they're trying to find a bit that they really connect with, and they're trying to find a bit that kind of speaks to them. And what's really cool is the first thing they'll do after spending some time doing this is they'll pick up a piece and they'll give it a good sniff. And I always think this is a really beautiful and primal thing to experience. And so from this point on, we will be spending, or these people, these students, will be spending the whole day with this one piece of branch they've selected. They're going to be wrestling with it, fighting with it, swearing at it, you know, making friends with it again, spending the whole day with this one piece. So we take this one piece of branch and we spend some time learning how to chop it and slice it and cut it and make this thing into a spoon. And this is where people start to realise that the beautiful spoon they arrived with in their mind is now drifting far, far away as they begin to understand that the skills that we're learning are actually about working with the wood as opposed to making it do something that it doesn't want to do. After the swearing has stopped and people realise that they're now having to work with the wood, and they start working with the wood, this kind of sense of sort of the perfectionism that they arrive with and the frustrations that have been happening, they all start to melt away. And that frees people up to really start to enjoy the making process. So once we're really enjoying the making process, we can go into this freakish place called the spoon zone. And the spoon zone is a place where it knows no time, and it knows hardly any sound. And it's just people are so incredibly focused on their making and their developing spoon. Okay, so some people might emerge occasionally, have a stretch, and sort of share stories of like aching limbs, and then they'll go back in. And people are really reluctant to leave this zone. Okay, and one of the things I've noticed that can possibly happen in this zone is something called toothpick theory. Now, this is where you go beyond making a spoon, and you are now whittling for whittling's sake, right? And you run the risk of whittling down into a toothpick or a pile of shavings. And I've heard people say, I know I've gone beyond carving a spoon, I'm running out of wood, but I can't stop and I don't want to. Which is a brilliant thing, because I love that. I love hearing that, because suddenly, you know, somebody that came to take away a beautiful spoon at the end of the day, they are now enjoying the process of making so much that it's not for any material gain anymore. It's all about the process. Wicked. Right, so a spoon is not a spoon officially until we get that bowl in the end, right? Yes, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when it's still a stick with a lump on the end, and everyone's a bit like, oh my God, there is this kind of celebration, relief, I've carved a spoon, you know, as that bowl starts to develop, and that's a really, really beautiful thing. So for all of this hard work and all of this perseverance and a day of sweating and swearing, what do you get? Well, you get aching limbs, dirty fingernails, cuts and bruises, lots of those. And of course, you get a very wonky spoon, hopefully. And I love spoons, you know, I'm mad about spoons. But you could almost say, and I'm quite reluctant to say this because I love spoons so much and it is my living, but you could almost say it's not entirely about the spoon. Bit Matrix. It's not entirely about the spoon. You could say that the spoon has almost acted as a catalyst, okay? And what it's done is it's allowed us, this journey of the day of making, it's allowed us to kind of tap in to a place deep within and connect with being okay with imperfections, and to really, truly be celebrating and be enjoying living in the moment. And I think in this day and age, those are two really ace things. Thank you very much.